Hey, Clay County. Been a little bit since my last video. Been working on trying to get my main computer up and running, and so I'm not using my wife's laptop all the time to make these videos. But I appreciate her letting me do that. Today I want to talk a little bit about the Big Bang and dark matter and all of the things that we've kind of been talking about in our last few videos. But I'm going to take a little bit of a different direction based on an article that I recently read. The article is from about 4 years ago, and it has to do with how the Big Bang kind of works, and it makes a little bit of an assumption in terms of the dark matter type stuff. So I want to explore that. It also is going to talk a little bit about the formation of stars, which we've covered when we talked about blue stars. And I'll bring all that back in. But first I need to kind of give a little bit of a primer on how the Big Bang is supposed to work. For those who have maybe never heard that before or who need a little bit of a refresher. So the way that it works is the speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. And that's 300 million meters per second. And that's pretty fast. But it's a speed limit on things that move through the universe, the vacuum of space and whatnot. And what it really means for us is that as we look out into space, the further and further we look, the further back in time we're allegedly looking. So if I look at something that is 1,000 light years away, it's supposed to have taken light 1,000 years to travel the distance from there to here. And so whatever I'm looking at, I'm actually looking at it 1,000 years ago. And if I look at something that is 12 billion light years away, then that should be 12 billion years ago that I'm looking at this object. So if, let's say, a star or even a galaxy were 12 billion light years away, I'm not looking at it in real time. I'm looking at it, according to the scientists, I'm looking at it as it was 12 billion years ago. And that is problematic. So according to the Big Bang, everything was a tiny dot spinning really, really fast, and it exploded, and then you had the formation of the very building blocks of matter, and then you had the formation of protons and neutrons and electrons, and then you had the formation of basic elements. And then as things continue to grow in the first few seconds and the first few years, and then on all the way up into the billions of years, you start to get all the way into galaxies. And galaxies were not supposed to form very early on because gravity is very weak. It's supposed to have taken several billion years before we start seeing anything close to the type of galaxies that we're used to seeing, like the Milky Way, Andromeda, and some of our close neighbors. And so to look back in time, to look so far away from us to near the edge of the known universe, where to see a galaxy that looks as mature as what the Milky Way does is astonishing. In fact, if you use science correctly, when you find something that falsifies a premise, you should drop your hypothesis. That's essentially what they found, but of course they're not going to drop the hypothesis. They're just going to try to find some way to explain it and change up their theory a little bit, even though theories are law and immutable according to people like David Campbell. But looking back at these galaxies so far away provides a real big problem for them. And it provides a problem for them in terms of time. It provides a problem for them in terms of their dark matter, dark energy. And it's a host of issues that they have. I'm going to read the article to you, just a couple of the first few paragraphs, and then I'm going to address a couple of the points here. I don't want to try to go too long today, but just want to touch on a few things, and then maybe we'll hit the article again another time. So the title of the article is 15 Old Massive Galaxies Found in the Early Universe, and then it has in quotes, "They shouldn't even exist." This is from March 15, 2014 on dailygalaxy.com. And the first couple of paragraphs say, "Yet another enigma has been discovered about the early universe, galaxies that seem to come out of nowhere. Most of the galaxies that have been observed from the early days of the universe were young and actively forming stars. Now, an international team of astronomers have discovered galaxies that were already mature and massive in the early days. The finding raises new questions, I bet it does, about how these galaxies formed so rapidly and why they stopped forming stars so early. 15 mature galaxies were found at a record-breaking average distance of 12 billion light years, when the universe was just 1.6 billion years old. Their existence at such an early time raises new questions about what forced them to grow up so quickly. Today, the universe is filled with galaxies that have largely stopped forming stars, a sign of galactic maturity. But in the distant past, galaxies were still actively growing by consuming gas and turning it into stars. This means that mature galaxies should have been almost non-existent when the universe was still young. So what we're doing is we're looking back 12 billion years ago, according to the Big Bang model, and we're seeing galaxies that are too old. They shouldn't even exist in the form that we see them. And instead of saying, oh, well, we keep finding these old galaxies and we keep finding all of these things that are at the edge of the universe that shouldn't be there, I guess our hypothesis is wrong, let's throw it out and try again. They don't do that. They come up with, the finding raises new questions about how they formed so rapidly. Well, that's assuming that they formed rapidly in terms of their Big Bang model. And it's amazing how these people are so tenaciously holding on to what is obviously an incorrect hypothesis. They won't throw it out. They have to hold on to it because they can't have steady state. We're going to talk about that when we get into traversing infinities. But they can't have steady state or a universe that's always been here. And they definitely don't want to admit that there was a creator. And so they have to hold on to this created out of nothing, which is the Big Bang, and they'll do anything and everything they can to protect that one little theory, or hypothesis even, I guess. So the problem is that these universes are old. They're not forming new stars. Well, that goes back to the whole blue star thing. The maximum lifespan of a blue star is 1 million years. If there's blue stars in the Milky Way, and the Milky Way isn't producing stars by their own admission in this article, then the Milky Way can't be more than 1 million years old. These galaxies have stopped producing stars 12 billion years ago. They're old, they're mature. And I would lay odds, I would predict as a scientist that it's got some blue stars in it. If we were ever able to observe more than the tiny dot than they have observed, if we could get individual stars pictured in these faraway galaxies, I'm going to predict there's blue stars in it. And that is problematic. If they're not forming any more stars, according to these guys, or in my belief system that they don't form new stars at all, having blue stars in them is problematic. And they say that, well, one hypothesis that we have is that there's so much dark matter, a dark matter halo around the edge of the galaxy that's 1 trillion times more than what should be there, than what we've ever calculated before. Well, remember, dark matter is just a placeholder. They might as well say that we have these magic stones that surround the galaxy and make the galaxy do things that the galaxy needs to do so that Big Bang is true. And that's essentially where they are in their hypothesis. They've got this dark matter, these magic stones, and now they've got these super galaxies that are super old compared to where they should be 12 billion years ago. And rather than saying our hypothesis is wrong, we're going to bring in the magic placeholder, the magic stones of dark matter, and now we're going to make there be trillions more than what there should be. They're literally making things up as they go along to help sustain their Big Bang. That's where they're at. They don't have anything. They're encountering data after data after data that is falsifying their hypothesis of an ancient universe, and they can't let it go. It's a joke. It's a laughable joke. If somebody that held to my paradigm came up with a hypothesis like this, where I had to keep inventing things, and I kept encountering things that falsified my hypothesis, and I just moved the goalpost a little bit further, I'd be laughed out of the scientific community. Of course, I already am because of what I believe, But they would have every right to do so if I acted the way that they're acting, because it's not logical. It's a blind faith that they have in something that they desperately believe in that has to be true for them because they don't like the alternative conclusions. So there's no scientific backing for the evidence that they're finding inside the paradigm of a Big Bang. And if we're seeing things that can't be, according to an ancient universe, then perhaps we have a universe that's very young, and in that universe we're going to find all kinds of diverse types of galaxies, those that what we would consider look young, look mature, some that look like they're not mature, stars that are very, very young, stars that look like they've been around for a long time, because the universe was created in a way that was mature. Now, that's not the same thing as it was created in a way to look old, but it was created fully formed and fully mature. And if it was made that way, then that fits with the prediction of an outside force, an outside mind that has created the universe and can create it with all of the diversity and all of the different locations as this creative force saw fit. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And so once again, the old Earth universe, I hypothesis the millions and billions of years of time that we're supposed to have according to these hypotheses, the billions of years that evolution needs to be true, they're just not there. And if we don't have the time, then we know that the evolution itself cannot be true. And once again, physics, just over and over again, it's hilarious in the past 20 years, 30 years or so, how often physics alone is showing that evolution simply cannot be true. Anyway, that's all I got for today. I'm already running 12 minutes here. I hope you found this informative. Go research it for yourself. It's a very interesting read. But whatever you do, keep learning, and we'll see you guys next time.